Hawker back from the United States, political strategist, and Richard Alston is also back from the United States, former Howard Cabinet Minister. Good morning to you both.
Morning, Paul.
Morning, Paul.
Richard, first up, let's just very quickly look over the Newspoll which is out today. Essentially, the figures are identical. No movement in either the primary vote or two-party preferred.
Well, look, I think all you can say is that the polls don't really tell you much at this stage. We're not yet in real time. I think once we get into the new year, it'll be very different. You would expect them to narrow, getting closer to an election, but a 4 or 5% lead is usually pretty impressive. I think at the moment you'd have to say Labor is stalled. The Liberals go into the break in a reasonably good position.
Having said that, Bruce, if you went back, what, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, Labor would be pretty happy to end the political year on these figures.
These are good numbers for Labor. It's a question of whether they can maintain this position and build some momentum. The problem, I think, for Labor is where the swing is on, whether we're getting enough of a swing in, say, New South Wales, particularly the western suburbs. So this will be a very patchy sort of an exercise, I think, for a while yet, seeing where swings are. You know, Labor's on the nose in New South Wales.
But, of course, game on next year because it's election year.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about this slush fund thing. It's hard for me to believe, Richard, that we are still talking about this, but the opposition are going to use this. Julia Bishop is going to push this really, really hard next year, and this week, and presumably the idea is just to further dent the Prime Minister's credibility going into the break.
Well, I think it's more than that, Paul. It's not really just a matter of sort of throwing mud and hoping something sticks. You've got to have substance to win the argument. But I think Julia Gillard's behaviour in this has been very evasive. I mean, it's straight out of the Paul Keating playbook. You scream and yell, you say you've answered questions, you call a press conference on one subject and you suddenly say, I'll take questions on this. You just don't have that sense that she's given a full explanation of her role in setting up this fund or even the circumstances of her leaving Slater and Gordon.
And Richard, I agree with you entirely, but is it not possible that her response to this is actually working and she is managing to keep some pretty nasty stuff covered up?
Well, look, if that's the case, that's a very good reason why Julia Bishop and the opposition should be pursuing the matter, and the media as well. And I think at the end of the day, we'll get as much as we can and the people will make a judgment. But there's a smell about this which I don't think is very pleasant, and certainly it's very un-prime ministerial to have been anywhere near this situation in the first place. I mean, it's not as if her behaviour has been absolutely spotless. All she's really saying is pretty murky, but you can't convict me of any offence, so let's move on.
Bruce, it is a tricky one, isn't it, for the Prime Minister? Because I think Richard's absolutely right. There is a smell about this, and the constituency has a whiff of that smell, and they're a little bit uneasy with it.
Well, I think when you get these sorts of claims made, of course, there are going to be, you know, concerns raised in the community, and people are going to be anxious about it. But it doesn't seem to be being reflected in the polling at the moment.
No, it doesn't. No.
And I think that really comes down to the fact that, you know, there's a lot of claim and counterclaim going on around the edges. We've had this character, Bruce Wilson, come out and say, well, she knew nothing about it.
Is that good for her or bad for her? I would have thought in a funny sort of way that was bad for her.
Well, I think it's, you know, on one level it's good for her, on another level I guess it calls on him to give more information about what actually happened. And I think, you know, unless there is some full-scale police investigation arising out of Victoria or something like that, then I suspect that this thing is just going to end up in claim and counterclaim.
What are the chances that the coalition's attacks this week, and they're going to, apparently by all accounts, they will be fearsome, with Tony Abbott taking the slightly higher ground and attacking from that point of view, and Julia Bishop coming in hard. What are the chances that they'll actually gain some momentum this week and force the Prime Minister to have to front the press again? I think
unless they actually come up with something new and compelling, this will just turn into another day of claim and counterclaim. That's my sense of it. I think the much bigger issue is asylum seekers for the government. I don't think this thing is really biting in a way.
Well, let's talk about asylum seekers very quickly, just to finish. Richard, the coalition are going to push temporary protection visas. I seriously get the feeling that the constituency knows this is a real problem, but doesn't actually think temporary protection visas or actually anything or anyone has a real solution to this.
Well, except that if you go back to the Howard years, it was clear there was a solution.
But I don't think you can go back to those years anymore. I think the globe has moved on.
But what I'm saying is there are ways. This is not an insoluble problem. There are ways in which you can deal with it, and you have to be sending a very firm message. Now, that's unpalatable to large sections of the media and certainly to the left wing of the Labor Party, but one way or another, you have to get across the message to people smugglers and those unfortunate people taking these huge risks that whatever happens, they're not going to get in unless they're genuine.
All right, all right. Yes or no, Bruce, temporary protection visas make any difference?
I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, it's got to be bipartisan. If they did that, then there would be then they would have some opportunity. Can I say, by the way, Paul, this will be our last appearance, and it's been absolutely wonderful working with you and Kath. We've had a great time. Everyone's been extremely professional, and we've enjoyed the
Brilliant
experience.
working with you too. Thank you very much.
Lovely.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
And exactly the same, Paul.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's been a pleasure working with you as well. Thank you both this morning.
Good. Great.
Okay, well, coming up.